How's it going, everyone? This is Emerald Knight Leon. I've got another video, a deck analysis on a EX collection deck. I don't know how really to describe this. For a bit of context, I don't remember building this deck. I remember being half asleep. I remember Elvis Presley in the background, and that's about it. I wake up at my desk the next morning, and this deck is on my desk. It spawned into existence, I guess. Regardless of that, this deck actually, throughout my testing, has done decently well. It has put up a good fight against Lilithloop and has, on occasion, beaten Lilithloop. It does struggle a bit with a lot of the other meta decks of BT6, and no doubt it'll probably struggle with BT7's meta decks, but it is a fun meme deck if you want to try it. Today is Etemon Presley. For anybody who has seen the English dub of Digimon, you'll understand that reference. So, on to our Digi Eggs. We are running 2 copies of Sumemon from BT2. This card is actually pretty good in this deck because what you're going to use him for is while you have another Digimon in play with the same name as this Digimon gets plus 2000 DP. You're going to use this in conjunction with preferably this Etemon, so you're going to bump his DP up to 8,000. If you want to use it with this Etemon, it'll go to 9,000. Or if you're going with either of our level 6s, either of the metal Etemons, they're going to go up to 12,000 on top of what other bonus there is they're going to get from their effects. Downside to this is only during your turn. So if you were to use it on this metal Etemon, it'll be 12,000 during your turn and then 12,000 during your opponent's turn due to its effect. Our remaining Digi Eggs will be 3 copies of Pagumon. Pagumon is going to be our searcher for this deck. His on deletion effect is very useful. Reveal the top card of your deck, add it to your hand if it's a black Digimon card, otherwise place it at the bottom. He's very useful with that. We're going to be running for our level 3s 2 copies of Chumon. If you want, you can run 1 or 2 more. I would preferably say 3 is the sweet spot for Chumon, because you want to see him often, but not often enough that you're not getting your other stuff that you have to digivolve on top of Chumon. You want Chumon to remain in play as is, because you want his effect to essentially suffocate your opponent. We'll be running 4 copies of Haguremon from BT2. He is a 2 cost to play. What you're preferably going to do is you're going to go with Chumon into your breeding area, and you're going to hard play either this or our next Digimon, EX Collection's Haguremon, who we're going to be using this for his on-play effect of trashing a machine or cyborg, whether that is going to be our Gardramon, our Volcanomon, or either of our Metal Etemons in order to boost our EX Etemon's effect is solely up to you. But his effect will let us draw 2, so we're going to be having an easier time getting to our level 6s. Our final level 3 is Toy Agumon from BT2. He is a 1000 DP Digimon, which isn't good. You're not going to use him to swing. You're going to keep him in your breeding area along with Chumon in order to Digivolve over him so your Digimon will gain Reboot. On our level 4s, we are running 4 copies of Numemon from BT2. Numemon is a great Digimon despite what he looks like. He's a 3 cost to play, 1 cost to Digivolve. What you're going to do is early game, you're going to just hard play him. And you're going to use that as your foothold to get into your ultimates. You're going to use that to get to Mega as fast as you can in the event that you can't Digivolve over your Toy Agumon to give it Reboot. Because you don't need to have... Metal Etemon does not need to have Reboot. It is very useful to have Reboot, though. Our other level 4, we're running 2 Mechanorimons. Preferably, if you want, you could bump the Gardramon down to 2 and Mechanori to 4 if you want, or run 3 of each. Mechanori is a staple for black decks because of its effect when this Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon in battle and survives, unsuspended. If your opponent is running a lot of low DP value Digimon, this is gonna give it them a bad day. This used to wreck Rookie Rush in earlier metas, and it's still putting in a lot of work today. We're running 4 copies of Gardramon, as I said before. If you want, you can bump it to 3 and bring Mechanori up to 3 if you want, so you can see Mechanori a bit more consistently. But Gardramon's Inherited is what we're looking at. You may trash 1 Digimon card with Machine or Cyborg in its trait to draw 2 when you're attacking. This is very useful in order to speed our way into getting Metal Etemon as fast as we can, because we want to pressure our opponent a lot in this deck. On our level 5s, we're running 4 copies of EX-01 Etemon. When this Digimon digivolves into a Digimon with Etemon in its name from your hand, reduce the memory cost of the Digivolution by 1. So we're basically turning Metal Etemon into a 2-cost Digivolution with him. And with his Inherited, you're giving your Metal Etemon jamming. If you were to use this with the older BT3 Metal Etemon, who on his own can't be blocked, you're going to give your opponent a rough time, because he can swing into your opponent's security, and the only thing that's really going to give him a bad time is cards with security effects. We'll be running 2 copies of Etemon's rival, Volcanomon. Yes, we're using his rival. Why? Because of that Inherited. During your turn, while your opponent has an unsuspended Digimon in play, this Digimon gains security attack +1. Combine that with the Metal Etemon that can't be blocked, he is very useful and is a force at some points. Definitely during my playtest, Volcanomon has helped me on occasion and has actually clinched me victories before. Finally, we're running 4 copies of BT3 Etemon. He is another blocker in this deck, a 6,000 DP, 7 cost to play, 3 cost to evolve. On deletion, reveal 5 cards from the top of your deck. You may play 1 level 6 Digimon with Etemon in its name among them without paying its memory cost, and then place the remaining on the bottom. I have had situations where my field is swarmed with these Etemon. I will have one of them be deleted, bring in another the Metal Etemon, and then start just chipping away at my opponent, because unlike a lot of blockers, he doesn't have the caveat where you lose 2 memory from attacking. That seems to be a level 4 blocker problem, not a level 5. The one downside with him is he does not have an Inherited, sadly, but he's mainly going to be there for blocker. What you want is you want to Digivolve onto Volcanomon or the EX Etemon, preferably. On our level 6s, we're running 3 copies of BT3's Etemon. You could run 4 if you want, and 3 of the EX. That's solely up to you if you want. I find this one to be just a little more worth it, because I want to capitalize on EX Etemon's effect. This Etemon is a very good card. He can't be blocked by your opponent's Digimon. The only threat to him is his really low DP value being 10,000, which makes it hard for him to swing into stuff. But the jamming effect from EX's Etemon does help him a lot because of that. On your opponent's turn, he will also get 2,000 DP, making him a little more good to survive. And if you combine that with Toyagumon's Reboot, he becomes a bit more manageable and sometimes a force. We'll also be running 4 copies of EX's Metal Etemon. During your turn, for each Digimon with Etemon in its name in your trash, he gets 1,000 DP. All you need is just 3 or 4 Etemons in your trash, and he becomes nearly unstoppable, being able to swing over a lot of stuff. And again, if you get him under the Etemon from EX, he'll gain jamming. Or in this particular Etemon's case, you want him under Volcanomon to give him that extra security check, which will be very useful. He also comes with the added bonus of, on deletion, de-digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon. In the event your opponent has a level 6 or even a level 7, and he gets deleted, you'll be able to use his effect to essentially stop your opponent. This doesn't, unfortunately, stop some things like, say, Omnimon, who consistently, most of their cards have some sort of effect that will prevent this. sadly, but it's still a very useful ability. Our tamers, we are running 2 copies of Tai Kamiya. Tai Kamiya is going to be our memory setter for this deck, and he also has the added bonus of during your opponent's turn, all of your black Digimon get 1000 TP. This is an amazing card to have with your blockers. Since we are running 3 different Digimon all with blockers, you're going to give them at most 2000 extra DP. With Mechanorimon, that is amazing because of his unsuspend ability. I've had opponents who've completely forgotten that I have 2 ties on there. They think they're going to be able to trade with Mechanori, and Mechanori is going to live. You're also going to be running 2 copies of Izzy and Joe. He is here because a lot of players during the BT6 meta were spamming their board a lot of times. So if your opponent has 2 or more Digimon in play at the start of your turn, you're gaining 2 memory, which is very useful. And then also, when one of your black Digimon is deleted during your opponent's turn, you can suspend this tamer to trigger draw 1. You're mainly going to use this with the BT3 Etemon, since he's going to be deleted during your opponent's turn, so you're getting multiple effects off. Combine that with the Pagumon, you're going to be able to draw, or potentially get 2 cards into your hand if you're lucky, plus 1 Metal Etemon on the field if you're really lucky. Finally, we're running 3 copies of Beast Cyclone, which is a slept-on card, unfortunately. It really shines in this deck because all of your Digimon with blocker or reboot will gain security attack +1. So if you have a lot of these Etemons out with blocker, they're going to wreck your opponent. And then to top that off, if you have Toy Agumon and a Metal Etemon, so it has reboot, that's going to be even better. Because now, if he's also under Volcanomon, you're getting 3 checks if your opponent has an unsuspended Digimon in play. Finally, we are going to be running 2 copies of Ironfisted Onslaught. You could change the ratio up to be 2 Beast Cyclones, 3 Onslaughts, or we'll cover some other options right after. But Ironfisted Onslaught is a very good card. He's useful. When you have the Izzy and Joes out all early game, it makes using him a lot easier because you're going to still be mostly, for the most part, choking your opponent. So as for our possible cards we can tech in, there is not a lot, unfortunately, but there are some. We only have 1 possible level 3 that might work and benefit in this, and that's Keramon from the EX collection. Mainly he's here to use that inherited of, for each other Digimon you have in play with the same name as this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP. He would be a card that you would be replacing probably your Haguremon 2 cost, which is a shame because you're not going to be able to choke as efficiently, but that inherited is incredibly useful because you're giving your Etemons more DP to work with. Our level 4, we could run a Greymon from BT2. He is another Digimon that if this Digimon has reboot, he'll gain jamming. So early on, if you are running, say, you're going to go and replace Numamon with that. So he's on top of Toy Agumon. You're going to go into preferably one of these Etemon. They'll get jamming, so you can start swinging early on. If it's the blocker Etemon or if it's Volcanomon, you then go into your Metal Etemon. He'll have jamming without having to be on this Etemon. And then he'll also gain an extra security check if he's on Volcanomon. It's a combo that could work. If you're not running Mechanorimon, Shademon is a good card to have. He doesn't have the unsuspend ability, but he does have a security ability where if it comes from security, you can auto-play it. He's still a blocker. He's still got 5000 DP and still can be very useful. On a level 5s, you could run Metal Greymon instead of Volcanomon. Basically, when a Digimon has reboot, it gains security attack +1. The one problem I see with this is it really hinges on you having under this the Toy Agumon with reboot. Because if you don't have that, you're not getting that security attack. the same rule will apply to this, which is Black Mech Gaugamon. For those running Machine Dramon, PSA, Black Mech Gaugamon is a cyborg. People forget this, and he has a decent inherited. While this Digimon has Reboot, it gets plus 2000 DP. Already, he also has Reboot as a regular effect, which is good, so you can start swinging in early if you wanted. Probably not recommended, but it's an option. Also, Infirmon. We would be using this to choke our opponent because when they're Digivolving into a level 5 or higher, we're gaining memory, getting them and inching them closer to losing their turn and going into our turn. And then also his inherited, all of your other Digimon with the same name as this Digimon get plus 2000. So if you have a board of a couple Metal Etemons, one of those Metal Etemons is going to be a bit more OP than the others. For our possible options, we could run Breath of the Gods. If you're not running Toy Agumon, and maybe you swap that for Karamon, this is a good card to have because you're going to gain Reboot on one of your one of your Metal Etemons. Furthermore, if you're going against Yellow, their DP can't be reduced, which is a very useful thing, or they can't be returned to your hand or deck. Another useful bit. And it's for a 2-cost too, so that's very useful. You could run Final Zubagon Punch. This is a card that could very well work. It does unfortunately hinge on being only useful to your EX Metal Etemon because of him gaining the 1000 DP for every Etemon in your trash. So once you get 3 Etemons or any Metal Etemon in your trash at 3, he's going to have 13,000. You're going to use Final Zubagon Punch. He is preferably going to be on Volcanomon. So if your opponent has unsuspended Digimon, he's going to get an extra security check. So he's at 2 checks. Plus Zubagon Punch, he's going to go to 16. Since he's at 16,000, he's going to gain Blocker, Reboot, and a security attack plus 1 until the end of your opponent's next turn. You're going to swing in for 3 checks. He's going to get Reboot on the next turn, so he's going to unsuspend, and then he can block your opponent and still be at 16,000. If you were at 4 memory, you could then combo that with Breath of the God. Yeah, he's still going to have Reboot regardless, but he's also going to get the added benefit, so your opponent can't send him back to your hand or back to your deck, and he can't reduce the DP. Instead of Ironfisted Onslaught, you could run Ultimate Flare, which will de-Digivolve 3 onto one of your opponent's Digimon, and then you delete all of your opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 3 or less. It's a very useful card to have in black decks. It's a staple even in D-Brigade. And I'm hoping I see it more in D-Brigade once we get D-Brigade Black Nightmon. Finally, there's Black Memory Boost. It's a good card to have. It's going to be used to search for your Etemons and Metal Etemons through your deck. It can also give you 2 memory. I don't know if it could really work very well because we already have a pretty good draw power through the deck. A bit too good in some cases, as sometimes it could deck you out. But I don't really see it being needed. As for Tamers, you could run Izzy. He's a memory setter, and then you're going to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. If all of them are black, you're going to gain a memory, and then you can place them on top of your deck in any order. Given the fact that our entire deck is full of black cards, you're going to get that memory regardless. So sometimes that can bring you back into your turn. Oftentimes I feel like I prefer choking my opponent at 1 instead of going back to 0. But that it is an option because then you can set up your top 3 in whatever order you want. And then since we're running a lot of blockers, you could run this starter deck tie, where you will use blocker to suspend one of your Digimon, and then you can suspend this Tamer to unsuspend one of your Digimon. I have used this in a Machine Dramon deck, and it's made my opponents have a bad day, because in that scenario you're running Mechanori out with a couple other blockers like Gardramon. Gardramon's already going to have blocked. They're going to swing at your security. You block with Mechanori, he unsuspends, and then you'll suspend tie to unsuspend the Gardramon. So that's it for this deck analysis. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you have any thoughts about this deck, leave a comment below. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next analysis. You have a good day.